3 days before Christmas, my sister called me just as I was wrapping the last gift under my small apartment tree. The lights were dim, the room quiet, the kind of quiet that feels peaceful only if you don't let your phone ring. Her name flashed on the screen, and I almost didn't answer. Almost. She didn't start with hello, she started with a sigh. The tired kind, the kind that already expects you to give in. "Can I ask you something?" she said, her voice soft, practiced. Before I could answer, she added, almost casually, "You'll be home anyway, right?" That sentence landed heavier than it should have. Not because of what it said, but because of what it assumed. I stood there, tape in one hand, ribbon in the other, suddenly aware that I had never actually been asked. Not this time. Maybe not ever. Something in my chest tightened. I smiled out of habit, but inside, a quiet alarm had already gone off. My name is Emily Carter, and I'm 31 years old. I live alone in a one-bedroom apartment just outside the city, close enough to visit family, far enough to breathe. I don't have kids. I don't have a partner. According to my family, that makes me free. Free to help. Free to adjust. Free to sacrifice. Growing up, I was always the easy one. The one who didn't complain. The one who could manage. My sister, Rachel, had 5 kids under the age of 10 and a permanent look of exhaustion that everyone treated like a crown. Every family gathering revolved around her schedule, her needs, her stress. Mine were invisible. So when she called that night, I already knew the shape of the favor before she finished explaining it. She talked about Christmas plans, flights, how rare it was for her and her husband to get time alone. She laughed softly and said, "It's only a few days." "A few days," she said, like 5 children weren't an entire life compressed into chaos. She never actually asked if I could do it. She talked as if it were already decided, already shared, already approved by everyone else. By the time she finished, my role had been written for me without my consent. I looked around my quiet apartment. At the tree I decorated myself, the dinner I planned to cook alone, the rare stillness I'd been looking forward to all year. And for the first time, I wondered when being reliable had turned into being disposable. I told her I'd think about it. But deep down, I already knew this Christmas was going to change everything. I learned my role in the family long before I understood I had been assigned one. It started when we were kids. Rachel was always the loud one, the dramatic one, the one who needed more attention, more patience, more understanding. I was the opposite, quiet, capable, mature for my age, the adults said, as if that were a compliment and not a quiet expectation to take up less space. When Rachel forgot her homework, it was because she was overwhelmed. When I forgot mine, it was because I should have known better. That pattern followed us into adulthood. Rachel married young. Then came the kids, one after another, until 5 little lives filled her house with noise, mess, and constant crisis. Every holiday, every birthday, every family gathering slowly shifted around her needs. Dinner times changed. Plans were canceled. Conversations stopped mid-sentence when one of her kids cried. And everyone accepted it, including me. I was the one who showed up early to help set the table, the one who stayed late to clean up, the one who held babies so Rachel could just sit for a minute. If a child needed watching, I watched. If someone needed a ride, I drove. If plans fell apart, I adapted. "You're so good with kids," my mother would say, smiling. "You don't mind, right?" my father would add, already assuming the answer. And I never said no. Not because I didn't mind, but because saying yes had become easier than explaining myself. I didn't have children of my own, and apparently that fact erased every other part of my life. My job was flexible. My weekends were open. My time, in their eyes, wasn't already spoken for. Thanksgiving was the first time I noticed how automatic it had become. Rachel announced, didn't ask, announced that I'd be helping with the kids so she could cook in peace. I spent most of the day on the living room floor, wiping spills and tying shoelaces, while everyone else sat at the table and talked. Later, when I finally sat down to eat, the turkey was cold. Christmas followed the same script every year. Rachel's house was chaos. Her kids tore through gifts while I was asked to keep an eye on them. I missed conversations. I missed quiet moments. I missed myself. But no one noticed. Or maybe they did, and it just didn't matter. When I moved into my own apartment at 27, I thought things might change. I had my own space, my own routines, my own version of peace. But distance didn't change my role. It only made my availability more valuable. "You don't have kids, Em," Rachel once said casually, when I hesitated about babysitting on short notice. "You don't really get how hard this is." "Die." I remember nodding, swallowing the familiar guilt, as if my exhaustion counted less because it came from a different place. Over time, I realized something uncomfortable. My family didn't see my willingness as generosity. They saw it as default, as obligation, as something they were entitled to. I wasn't the helper because I volunteered. I was the helper because I was convenient. And the worst part? I had helped build that version of myself. Every yes, every swallowed frustration, every time I put my own plans aside reinforced the idea that my life was flexible while everyone else's was fixed. By the time Rachel called me before Christmas, asking for help, this history was already written between us. I wasn't her sister in that moment. I was a solution, a placeholder, a plan she didn't bother to confirm. And as I stood there, phone in hand, listening to her talk as if my answer didn't matter, I finally understood something I had avoided for years. This wasn't about 5 kids. It was about a role I had never chosen but was always expected to play. I didn't find out about my sister's plan because she told me. I found out by accident. 2 nights after her call, my phone buzzed while I was brushing my teeth. A message popped up in the family group chat. One I usually kept muted because it was mostly pictures of my nieces and nephews, and long voice notes I never had time to listen to. This time, a single sentence caught my attention. "Good thing Emily will be with the kids over Christmas," my mother wrote. "You two deserve the break." I stared at the screen, toothpaste dripping into the sink, my heart slowing in a way that felt unnatural. I read it again, and then again. Emily will be with the kids. Not might. Not is helping. Will be. My phone vibrated again. Rachel replied with a laughing emoji and, "Yes, finally. I haven't slept in years." That was it. No question marks. No checking in. No mention of the fact that I had never said yes. I felt something cold settle in my chest, not shock, not anger yet, but a deep, quiet realization. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a plan. A full plan. And I had been written into it like a footnote. I scrolled up through the messages I'd missed earlier that day. There it was. Details I hadn't been meant to see. Flight times. Hotel reservations. A comment from my father about how, "It's good Emily's responsible." A message from Rachel saying, "I already told the kids Aunt Emily will be here." My hands started to shake. They hadn't just assumed my availability. They had announced it, shared it, built their holiday around it. And no one, not my sister, not my parents, had thought it necessary to actually ask me. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in my lap, staring at my quiet apartment, the same apartment they all described as empty, as if that meant unused, as if my solitude was a gap they were free to fill. 5 kids, 10 days. No warning. I imagined it all unfolding without me knowing. Rachel packing her bags, relieved. My parents smiling, satisfied that the problem had been solved. The kids being told where they'd stay, what to expect, who would be taking care of them. And me finding out after the decision was already made? I typed and erased 3 different responses before finally putting my phone down. I wasn't ready to speak yet. I needed to understand something first. Had Rachel ever planned to ask me? The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. That phone call wasn't a request. It had been a formality. A soft introduction to a conclusion she'd already reached. The group chat was proof that, in her mind, my answer didn't matter. I thought back to her words. "You'll be home anyway, right?" Not a question. A confirmation. A strange sense of embarrassment washed over me, not because I had done anything wrong, but because I had let this happen so many times before. I had trained them to expect my silence, my compliance, my flexibility. And now, they were counting on it. I finally sent a message. "I never agreed to watch the kids," I wrote, carefully. "I was never asked." The typing dots appeared almost instantly. Rachel replied, "We thought you wouldn't mind." That was the moment everything shifted. Because in that sentence, I heard the truth. Not apology, Not confusion, just entitlement wrapped in familiarity. They hadn't asked because, to them, asking wasn't necessary. And sitting there, phone glowing in the dark, I understood something I couldn't unsee. This wasn't about Christmas plans gone wrong. It was about how easily my life had been volunteered away without my consent, without my voice, without a second thought. I didn't say no right away. I tried to say it gently, carefully, in the way women are taught to speak when they don't want to upset anyone. "I'm not sure I can do that," I texted Rachel later that night. 10 days is a lot. I had other plans. The response came fast. "What plans?" she wrote. "You didn't mention anything." I stared at the message longer than I should have. There it was, the first shift. My plans, whatever they were, suddenly needed justification, proof, validation. As if my time only counted if it was visible to them. Before I could reply, my phone rang. It was my mother. "Emily," she said, skipping any greeting, "Rachel told me you're being difficult." Difficult. That word slid into the conversation so smoothly it almost sounded reasonable. I took a breath. "I never agreed to watch the kids," I said. "I wasn't even asked." There was a pause on the line, then a sigh. "Well, honey," my mother said, "she just assumed you'd help. It's Christmas." There it was, the holiday card version of guilt. Christmas, as if the word itself erased consent. "I'm allowed to say no," I replied quietly. Another pause. This one longer, heavier. "Of course you are," she said, but her tone shifted. "But Rachel has 5 children. You don't have any. It's not the same." That sentence landed exactly where it always did. In the place where my life was measured and found lacking. As if not having children meant I had less responsibility, less exhaustion, less right to boundaries. By morning, my phone was filled with messages. "Rachel, you know how hard this year has been for us." "Dad, families help each other, Em." Option. Rachel again. "It's only for a few days." "Mom, you're overthinking this." Every message chipped away at the same idea. My hesitation was unreasonable. My discomfort was selfish. My no was an inconvenience they expected me to correct. When I tried to explain, really explain, things got worse. "I just need time for myself," I said during a call with Rachel. "I'm exhausted too." She laughed. Not cruelly, softly, like someone indulging a child. "Tired from what?" she asked. "You work from home, you sleep through the night, you don't know what real exhaustion is." I felt my chest tighten. "I still have a life," I said. "And we don't?" she shot back. "That's not fair, Emily. You're acting like we're asking for something unreasonable." Unreasonable. 5 kids. 10 days. No warning. No consent. But suddenly, I was the problem. Then came the reframing. The gaslighting dressed up as concern. "You've always been so good with them," Rachel said. "You'll regret it if you don't help," my father warned. "Think about how this will look," my mother added softly. "How this will look." That was the moment I realized the conversation was never about what I could handle. It was about maintaining the image of a family that pulls together. And my role in that image was non-negotiable. When I stayed quiet, they filled the silence for me. Rachel told the kids I was just stressed. My parents told relatives I was coming around. "I have a great deuces." Someone even joked in the group chat, "Emily always says no at first." As if resistance was just a phase, a delay, something to push through until I folded like I always had before. I lay awake that night, phone face down on my nightstand, replaying every conversation, every sigh, every loaded sentence. They weren't hearing me, because they didn't need to. In their minds, my no wasn't final. It was a problem to be solved, a barrier to wear down, a misunderstanding that would disappear once I felt guilty enough. And that's when the truth became impossible to ignore. I wasn't being asked to help. I was being pressured to comply. And in a family where no was treated like betrayal, saying it out loud felt less like a choice and more like a quiet act of rebellion. The breaking point didn't come during a fight. There was no shouting, no slammed doors, no dramatic phone call where someone finally said the wrong thing too loudly. It came quietly. the way the most painful truths usually do. 2 days before Christmas, my family gathered at my parents' house for what was supposed to be a short visit. I almost didn't go. Something in me already knew I would leave feeling smaller than when I arrived. But I went anyway, out of habit, out of hope. Rachel was there with all 5 kids. The house was loud, crowded, and tense. Toys covered the floor. Someone was always crying. Someone was always calling my name. Emily, can you watch them for a second? Emily, can you help with this? Emily, you don't mind, right? I moved automatically, like muscle memory. Picking up, cleaning, redirecting, doing the things I had always done. At some point, I slipped into the kitchen for a moment of quiet. I was standing by the counter, staring at a mug of cold coffee, when I heard my parents and Rachel talking behind me. They didn't lower their voices. They didn't need to. "She's just overwhelmed," my mother said. "She'll calm down," my father replied. Rachel laughed softly. "She always does." Then she said it. Not cruelly, not angrily, just casually. "Emily doesn't even have kids. What else does she really have to do over Christmas?" I felt it like a crack down the center of my chest. For a second, I wondered if I had misheard her. I stayed perfectly still, my hand gripping the edge of the counter. No one noticed. No one turned around. They continued talking, already moving on to the next detail of their plans. But I couldn't move. That sentence stripped everything down to its simplest, ugliest truth. In that moment, my life, my work, my exhaustion, my loneliness, my need for rest was reduced to nothing. Empty space, available time, a convenience. I had spent years trying to explain myself in polite ways, trying to be understanding, trying to be the good sister. And with one careless sentence, Rachel had said what everyone else had been thinking all along. I wasn't child-free. I wasn't independent. I wasn't living a full life. I was just unused. Something inside me went quiet. Not numb, clear. I realized then that no explanation would ever be enough. I could list my responsibilities, my stress, my plans, my feelings, and it wouldn't matter, because they weren't listening for understanding. They were listening for compliance. I walked back into the living room and looked at my nieces and nephews running across the floor. None of this was their fault. They were children, but I also saw myself in that moment running, reacting, always needed, never chosen. I picked up my coat without saying goodbye. No one stopped me. On the drive home, I didn't cry, I didn't yell, I didn't even feel angry in the way I expected to. I felt something steadier, heavier, like a door closing somewhere inside me. That sentence didn't hurt because it was cruel. It hurt because it was honest. And once I heard it, I knew there was no way to go back to pretending my no didn't matter. I didn't announce my decision. I didn't call Rachel to explain myself. I didn't send a long message defending my feelings or listing reasons they would never respect. I had done enough explaining already. That night, after I got home, I sat alone in my apartment with the lights off, the Christmas tree glowing softly in the corner. For the first time in days, my phone was silent. No guilt. No pressure. Just space. And in that space, I made a decision. I opened my laptop and checked my calendar. I had time off from work. I had savings. I had options I had never allowed myself to consider because I was always too busy being available for everyone else. I booked a short trip out of town. Nothing extravagant. A quiet place, somewhere I could wake up without being needed, somewhere no one expected anything from me. I didn't tell my family. The next morning, I packed a small suitcase. Only what I needed. Clothes, a book I'd been meaning to read for months, the scarf my grandmother had given me years ago. Every movement felt strangely calm, like my body already knew this was right. I left my apartment early, before the city woke up. The air was cold and clear. My phone buzzed once in my pocket, but I didn't check it. For once, someone else's urgency wasn't my responsibility. As I locked the door behind me, I didn't feel brave or dramatic. I felt quiet, resolved. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't punishment. It was a boundary. For years, I had been waiting for permission to choose myself. That morning, I realized I didn't need it. I walked away without making a sound, carrying nothing but the decision I had finally allowed myself to make. Christmas morning arrived quietly for me. I woke up in a small rental house just as the sky was turning pale gray, the world hushed in that rare moment before the day begins. No alarms, no voices calling my name, no footsteps racing down a hallway, just silence. Back home, the morning unfolded very differently. I didn't see it myself, but I learned later how it happened. Rachel pulled into the driveway with 5 restless kids bundled in coats, half asleep and already arguing. The trunk was packed, snacks, bags, last-minute instructions rehearsed in her head. She rang the doorbell. Once. Twice. Nothing. She knocked harder this time, shifting her weight from foot to foot as the kids grew louder behind her. She checked her phone, frowning. Another knock. Then a call. Straight to voicemail. At first, she assumed I was running late, that I'd step out any second, apologizing, keys in hand, ready like always. She waited. The cold crept in. The kids started complaining. Then the messages began. Emily, where are you? Are you inside? This isn't funny. Call after call, text after text. My name lighting up screens, unanswered. At my parents' house, confusion turned into panic. Plans unraveled, flights were missed, voices rose. Someone asked the question no one had bothered to ask before. Did Emily actually agree to this? By the time the truth settled in, it was too late. Rachel's Christmas had collapsed before it even started. No trip, no escape, just 5 kids, a locked door, and a plan built on an assumption that had finally failed. I didn't answer my phone that morning. I made coffee. I sat by the window. I watched snow drift slowly past, feeling something unfamiliar settle into my chest. Peace. For the first time in years, Christmas happened without me being pulled in every direction. Without guilt. Without being used. And somewhere far away, the chaos I had quietly stepped out of was unfolding without me. The collapse didn't happen all at once. It came in fragments, missed calls, half-written messages, the sharp edge of panic slipping into every word. I didn't see it firsthand, but the pieces reached me anyway, carried through screens and second-hand explanations. My phone buzzed non-stop that afternoon. My mother called first. I let it ring. Then my father. Then Rachel again, this time leaving a voicemail I didn't listen to until hours later. When I finally did, her voice sounded nothing like the confident woman who had planned everything without me. "This isn't fair, Emily," she said. "We had arrangements." Arrangements. That word told me everything. Not a single message said sorry. Not one asked if I was okay. They weren't worried about me. They were scrambling to fix a plan that had collapsed without its foundation. By evening, the family group chat exploded. My mother. Why didn't anyone confirm this? My father. We all assumed. Rachel. I can't believe she did this today of all days. No one mentioned the part where no one had asked. The blame shifted quickly, like it always does when a system built on silence breaks down. My parents argued about who should have stepped in. Rachel complained about being abandoned. Someone suggested I had overreacted. Then, finally, the question appeared. Did Emily ever actually agree to watch the kids? The chat went quiet after that. It was a small moment, but it felt heavy, because for the first time, the truth was visible to everyone. The expectation they had all shared quietly, comfortably had no proof behind it. Later that night, my mother called again. This time, I answered. Her voice was softer, careful. "We didn't realize you felt so strongly," she said. "You could have said something." I almost laughed. "I did," I replied. "You just didn't hear it." She didn't argue. She didn't apologize either. But the silence that followed felt different, less defensive, more uncertain. Rachel didn't call. I heard later that she and my parents had argued about the trip, about the kids, about who should have handled things better. The frustration they had aimed at me turned inward, ricocheting between them with nowhere else to land. And that's when I understood something clearly. I had never been the problem. I had been the solution they relied on so no one else had to adjust. Once I removed myself, the cracks they'd ignored for years became impossible to miss. That Christmas ended differently for everyone. Loud for them, quiet for me. And in that quiet, I felt something shift not just in the family, but in how I saw myself. I wasn't the one who broke the holiday. I was the one who stopped holding it together at my own expense. My Christmas didn't look like anyone else's that year. There were no crowded living rooms, no raised voices, no last-minute favors disguised as tradition. I spent the day slowly, deliberately, as if every quiet moment were something fragile I had finally earned. I woke up late. I made breakfast just for myself. I sat by the window with a cup of coffee and watched the morning stretch out without interruption. No one needed me. No one expected anything. And for the first time, that didn't feel lonely, it felt honest. In the afternoon, my phone buzzed once. It was a message from my mother. "Next time," she wrote, "we should talk first." I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. "Yes," I typed. "We should." That was all. There was no dramatic apology, no grand realization, just a small shift. But sometimes justice doesn't arrive as an apology, it arrives as clarity. Later that evening, Rachel finally texted. "You could have warned us," she said. I read the message calmly, without the familiar knot in my stomach. Then I answered, with the only sentence that mattered. "You never asked me." I turned my phone face down and didn't look at it again. That night, I cooked a simple dinner and played music softly in the background. I wrapped myself in a blanket and let the quiet settle in. I thought about how many years I had confused being needed with being valued, and how easily one replaces the other if you let it. I didn't ruin Christmas. I reclaimed it. And in doing so, I learned something I should have known long ago. Choosing yourself doesn't make you selfish. It makes you whole. That was my first quiet Christmas. It wasn't loud. It wasn't impressive. But it was mine. If you've made it this far into my story, I want to thank you not just for listening, but for seeing me. For most of my life, I believed that being the good one meant staying quiet, saying yes, and putting everyone else first. I thought love was proven through sacrifice, even when that sacrifice slowly erased me. It took one Christmas, one painful sentence, and one quiet decision to finally understand something simple but powerful. My time, my peace, and my boundaries matter too. If you support the choice I made, I invite you to leave a comment below. Tell me honestly, what would you have done in my place? Would you have said yes out of guilt, or walked away to protect yourself? Your words don't just help this channel, they help people like me feel less alone. And if you're someone who always gets labeled selfish the moment you say no, please hear this advice from my heart. Setting boundaries does not make you cold. Choosing rest does not make you lazy. Protecting your life does not mean you love your family less. It means you finally love yourself enough to stop disappearing. I hope you take this story with you into your own life. Ask yourself where you've been giving too much without being asked and where you're allowed to stop. If stories like mine resonate with you, please subscribe to this channel, like the video, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message today. Your support helps us continue telling real, emotional stories that remind us all, it's never too late to choose yourself.